It started with a simple vacation. Two friends chasing adventure, chasing stories. But within 48 hours of landing in Pyongyang, they vanished. No phone calls, no emails, no trace. For months, their families were told nothing, just silence. Then, one morning, the U.S. Embassy received a chilling fax, typed in broken English, signed only with one word, confession. What followed would uncover one of the most disturbing cases of modern imprisonment, and the dark truth behind what really happens when Americans get trapped inside North Korea. April 2018. Ethan Myers, 29, an aspiring journalist from Colorado, and his best friend, Chris Langford, 31, a travel vlogger, landed in North Korea as part of a government-approved cultural tour. They weren't spies. They weren't missionaries. They were curious Americans. Too curious. Maybe. Their plan was to film a short travel documentary about the world's most isolated country. But what they didn't know was that someone was already watching them the moment they stepped off the plane. Their tour guide, Mr. Han, smiled politely, but every word, every movement was being recorded. By nightfall, their hotel rooms were bugged. By morning, their cameras were confiscated. And by the third day, Ethan was gone. It happened inside a museum. Ethan had wandered off, filming a mural that depicted North Korea's eternal leaders. 5 minutes later, guards surrounded him. Tourists screamed. Cameras went dark. Witnesses say he was dragged away by uniformed men, his shouts echoing through the marble halls. Chris tried to intervene, but was shoved into a van and blindfolded. They were accused of espionage. The evidence? A GoPro camera and a drone they never even used. For North Korea, that was enough. Within hours, both men disappeared into a maze of concrete walls known only by one name among locals, Camp 27. Camp 27 wasn't on any map. It didn't officially exist. It was where political prisoners vanished, sometimes for decades. And for the first time, two Americans had just become part of it. Chris later described the camp in his secret letters, smuggled through other inmates. It's a place where silence screams louder than any gunshot. The walls breathe. The guards never blink. Inmates woke up at 4 a.m. every day to march, dig, and confess to crimes they didn't commit. Meals? A few grains of rice. Punishments? Days in the box. A coffin-sized cell buried underground. But what terrified the most wasn't the beatings. It was the interrogations. Because every session ended the same way, with the guards whispering, "America will never find you." Ethan was held in solitary confinement. No light, no sound, no sense of time. For weeks, they forced him to write a confession that he was a CIA operative sent to film propaganda against the state. He refused, at first, but after 23 days without sleep, he signed. The guard smiled. Cameras rolled. He was forced to read his confession on national television. The same night, that broadcast was played across North Korean state news. And the world finally saw his face again. But to his family watching in Colorado, something looked off. His eyes weren't the same. His voice was calm, but his hands were shaking, almost as if someone was standing behind the camera. While Ethan and Chris were being broken inside Camp 27, their families were fighting on another battlefield, Washington. The U.S. State Department went silent. Negotiations were ongoing, they said, but behind closed doors, the truth was darker. North Korea wasn't just holding two Americans. They were using them as bargaining chips, for leverage, for power. A leaked memo would later reveal that Pyongyang demanded $5 million in humanitarian aid in exchange for their release. But no one paid, and weeks turned into months. In September 2018, 5 months after the arrest, Chris vanished from Camp 27. Ethan was told that Chris had confessed fully and was transferred, but other prisoners whispered that a foreigner had been executed in the woods that night. No one saw Chris again, not his guards, not even Ethan. It was as if the world had simply erased him. But a year later, a mysterious letter surfaced in Seoul. signed by someone calling themselves CL. Inside was a single sentence written in trembling English. They made me dig my own grave, but I am still here. Ethan knew he wouldn't survive another winter. His body was failing, his mind slipping. But then, fate intervened. A guard named Sung-ho, barely 22, whispered a deal. He said his sister had once escaped to China, and he wanted out too. If Ethan could promise him asylum, he'd help him escape. It sounded impossible, but Ethan agreed. For 3 nights, they dug a tunnel beneath the barracks, using spoons. Every sound had to be masked by the prison's nightly drills. Every heartbeat could have meant death. And on a foggy November night in 2019, they made their move. They ran for miles, through freezing mud, through the dark forests of North Hamgyong province. Helicopters roared overhead. Dogs barked in the distance. They had to reach the Tumun River, the line between North Korea and China. Sung-ho was shot first. Ethan dragged him to the edge of the river, blood mixing with snow. Sung-ho whispered one last thing before he died. "Tell them what you saw." Ethan crossed alone, half conscious, half alive, and when he woke up, he was in a Chinese detention center, handcuffed to a bed. He had escaped hell, only to walk into another prison. After 6 months of negotiations and international pressure, Ethan Myers was finally released and brought back to the United States in May 2020. He was barely recognizable, 50 pounds lighter. Haunted, in his first interview, he whispered, "I didn't escape. I was released to tell a story they wanted told." When asked what he meant, he smiled faintly and said, "They needed a messenger." And that's when investigators realized. Some of the footage from Ethan's confiscated cameras had resurfaced online on a North Korean propaganda website. It showed him smiling, interviewing locals, praising the regime. It wasn't the footage he shot. It was footage they edited. Someone had rewritten his story. 2 years later, in 2022, a satellite image caught something unusual near Camp 27. A drone, American-made, still active. The serial number traced back to Chris Langford, the same drone that supposedly got them arrested, meaning Chris had been working with someone all along. Some believe he was an undercover journalist. Others say he was a U.S. intelligence asset gone rogue. But the truth was buried with him, because Camp 27 was destroyed weeks later, burned to ground. And Ethan Myers vanished again, this time for good. The case remains open. No official report. No closure. But if you search deep enough in online forums, you'll find something strange. A single video uploaded under the name Han27. It shows Ethan looking into the camera, whispering. If you're watching this, they're already here. Then the screen goes black. And that was the last anyone ever saw of him. 6 months after Ethan's mysterious disappearance in 2020, a classified folder arrived at an international newsroom in Seoul. No return address, no sender name, just a flash drive labeled Echoes of Camp 27. Inside, hours of raw video files. Some were blurred, some corrupted, but one clip was crystal clear. Ethan whispering into the camera, "If this footage reaches you, it means I failed." He looked thinner. His hair was shaved. Behind him, shadows moved. He said something strange. "They don't keep prisoners here, they train them." Then the file cut off. Investigators couldn't confirm when or where that video was recorded, but metadata showed one impossible detail. The clip was created 2 weeks after Ethan was declared missing in China, meaning he was alive. Enter Lena Graves, an award-winning investigative journalist from London. She'd spent years covering secret prisons and hostage diplomacy. When she saw the footage, she knew this wasn't just a kidnapping story. It was something bigger. She retraced Ethan's last known path, from Pyongyang to the Chinese border, through black markets and refugee routes. Locals spoke of a foreign ghost who'd appeared months earlier, a man who paid with American dollars, wore a prison uniform, and vanished after being picked up by men in suits. One smuggler claimed he saw him taken into a black van marked with the logo of the Ministry of State Security, China's intelligence agency. If true, Ethan hadn't escaped. He'd been transferred. Lena uncovered something chilling. An unclassified cable dated June 2019, months before Ethan's escape. It outlined a joint covert agreement between North Korean and Chinese intelligence to exchange foreign detainees for technological cooperation. The document mentioned two Americans. Their code names, Falcon and Ghost. Falcon was Chris. Ghost was Ethan. But why were they on an intelligence list before they were even arrested? Had they been watched long before they crossed the border? Lena dug deeper, and that's when she discovered something that changed everything. Chris Langford wasn't just a travel vlogger. He'd previously worked as a contractor for a private intelligence firm, one linked to several Black Ops missions in Eastern Europe. In other words, Chris wasn't innocent, and Ethan might have been caught in the crossfire of something far more dangerous. Months into her investigation, Lena received another encrypted file, this time through an anonymous message board. The subject line read, "You're looking in the wrong country." The footage was grainy, filmed from a CCTV camera. Inside, what looked like a hospital corridor, a man was being wheeled on a gurney, restrained, barely conscious. His face was Ethan's. In the corner of the footage was a date stamp, March 2021. Location, Dandong City, China. A guard in the video shouted a phrase in Korean. Transfer to Section 47. Section 47 wasn't a hospital ward. It was a covert detention facility used for psychological conditioning, the kind of place people entered and forgot who they were when they came out. Lena's investigation began drawing attention from the wrong people. She was followed in Beijing, her hotel room searched, and one night, she received a note slipped under her door. "Stop looking for Ghost or you'll join him." But she didn't stop. Instead, she tracked down a man named Dr. Hwan, a former North Korean medical officer who defected in 2015. He revealed the true purpose of Camp 27. It wasn't just a prison. It was a behavioral experiment lab. According to Hwan, prisoners were tested to see if loyalty could be engineered through isolation and brainwashing. He said Americans were especially valuable subjects. They were used to create propaganda figures, trained to appear free, but controlled through chemical conditioning. Then he said something that froze Lena completely. If Ethan Myers is alive, he's not Ethan anymore. June 2022. North Korean state television aired a special broadcast titled Reborn Under the Sun. It showed a man introducing himself as Michael Hahn, a Western engineer who volunteered to help rebuild rural factories. But people online noticed something strange. The man looked exactly like Ethan Myers. Same facial scar, same voice pattern, except he spoke perfect Korean and smiled like a man who'd never known pain. Analysts called it impossible. Facial recognition AI gave a 98.7% match, meaning Ethan was alive, but living under a new identity created by his captors. Lena's story was ready to publish. She had footage, testimony, and files that could expose an international operation. But 1 week before release, her newsroom was raided by unknown agents. Every hard drive was seized, every backup erased. Her editor vanished on a business trip and was never seen again. The story never aired. But fragments of her investigation leaked through underground networks, and one of those files contained a short, corrupted video labeled Ghost Transmission. In the video, a man sits in front of a flickering light. He whispers, "They're rewriting us. One by one, we become the story they want told." The camera pans slightly, and behind him, pinned to the wall, is a photo of Lena Graves, crossed out in red. 3 months later, U.S. intelligence intercepted a radio signal near the Korean border. The signal repeated one phrase in Morse code, Camp 27 Reborn. The source was traced to an abandoned mining town north of Hamhung. Satellite images showed nothing until analysts enhanced the infrared scan. There was a complex of underground chambers, and in one of them, A single light flickering in the dark. An image surfaced online days later. A photo taken by a satellite operator. It showed two figures walking through snow toward a concrete gate. One of them was unmistakably Ethan Myers. The other, his supposed dead friend, Chris Langford, alive, together, walking back toward Camp 27. The world never learned what truly happened after that. Camp 27 was bombed in a border skirmish 2 weeks later. No bodies were recovered. No survivors found. But a year later, an anonymous video appeared on the dark web. A man's voice distorted and low. The experiment never ended. It just moved west. Some believe it was a hoax. Others think it was Ethan, warning the world that the prisons aren't walls anymore. They're systems. And maybe, just maybe, he never escaped North Korea at all. Maybe North Korea escaped with him. In 2025, a journalist investigating the same case vanished near the Mongolian border. Her last transmission was a single line of encrypted text. Echoes of Camp 27 continue. To this day, no official documents acknowledge Ethan Myers, Chris Langford, or the alleged facility. But for those who've seen the footage, one thing is certain. Sometimes the most dangerous prisons aren't made of bars. They're built from lies.